It was a royal love story that should have been a fairy tale, a king and queen brought together by arrangement who forged a bond so deep it became legendary. They had a happy marriage, 15 children, and the love of their people. But this wasn't a fairy tale, it was a tragedy. The same mind that ruled an empire would betray the king, and the love that was his greatest strength would be tested by a descent into madness that threatened to shatter everything. This is the true story of King George III and Queen Charlotte, a tale of devotion, duty, and the devastating illness that turned their gilded world into a private prison. It's a story that proves even the most powerful crowns can't protect against the fragility of the human mind. In 1760, when George III became king, he was just 22 years old, unmarried, and deeply religious. He was determined to be different from his grandfather, whose reign was marked by political drama and courtly scandals. His first and most urgent task was to find a queen and produce an heir. The search led his advisors to a small German principality and a 17-year-old princess named Sophie Charlotte. Charlotte wasn't a conventional beauty, but she was praised for her good humor and easygoing nature. Crucially, she was raised away from political scheming, which made her the perfect match for a king who just wanted a quiet home life. After the proposal was accepted, Charlotte endured a miserable sea voyage to England. She arrived so sick and thin that her heavy, diamond-encrusted wedding dress nearly fell right off of her. On September 8, 1761, only 6 hours after they met for the first time, George and Charlotte were married. What started as a political arrangement quickly turned into something incredibly rare for the time, a genuine love match. Though Charlotte barely spoke English at first, she learned fast, and they soon discovered they had much in common. They both adored music. George played the flute, and Charlotte was a talented harpsichordist. After she arrived in England, Johann Christian Bach, a son of the great J.S. Bach, even became her music master at court. Unlike other kings, George was completely faithful to his wife and never took a mistress. Their marriage was a picture of domestic bliss. They preferred a relaxed life at their homes in Kew and Windsor to the stuffy formality of the court. Over the next 2 decades, they had 15 children, 9 sons and 6 daughters, 13 of whom survived to adulthood. They were doting parents, with George deeply involved in their education and Charlotte overseeing their tutors. For their first 25 years together, they were the model royal family, a symbol of stability in a chaotic world. But a shadow was gathering, ready to tear their world apart. The first serious signs of trouble appeared in 1788, though some say there was a brief episode as early as 1765. The king's illness started with physical symptoms like stomach pain, but it soon became something much more frightening. He would talk non-stop for hours until he was hoarse and foam-frothed at his mouth. His behavior was erratic and unpredictable. He'd weep, say he wanted to die, and suffer from vivid hallucinations. There are wild stories from this time, and while some may be more legend than fact, they paint a vivid picture of his state. One famous anecdote claims that while riding in Windsor Great Park, he stopped his carriage, got out, and shook hands with an oak tree, believing it to be the King of Prussia. Queen Charlotte was terrified. The kind, loving husband she knew was gone, replaced by a volatile stranger. The stress was so immense, it's said her hair turned white. Their relationship transformed from a partnership into that of a patient and his heartbroken caretaker. The royal doctors were clueless, and their cures were brutal. They used leeches, ice-cold baths, and acidic poultices to burn his skin, all in an attempt to draw out the evil humors. He was often confined in a straitjacket and kept away from his family, which caused unbearable pain for both him and the queen. For years, many believed the king's illness was porphyria, a rare genetic blood disorder. However, a modern analysis of his letters and medical records points overwhelmingly to a severe psychiatric illness, most likely bipolar disorder. His manic phases were marked by frenzied energy and rambling sentences. One of his notes was over 400 words long, but contained only a handful of verbs. The king's illness wasn't just a private tragedy, it was a national crisis. He recovered from this first major bout in 1789, and the nation celebrated. But it was only a temporary relief. The illness would keep coming back, dragging him deeper into his fractured mind and leaving his queen in heartbreaking isolation. The story of George and Charlotte is an incredible reminder of how love can be tested in the most unimaginable ways. If you find their story as compelling as we do, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the dramatic lives of historical figures. Your support helps us bring these stories to light. For 2 decades, the king's illness came and went, with periods of sanity offering the family fragile hope. But in 1810, the final blow came. The king's youngest and favorite daughter, Princess Amelia, died at the age of 27 from a long illness, likely tuberculosis. As a final token of her love, she had a ring made for him containing a lock of her hair. Receiving it shattered him completely. The grief triggered a relapse from which George III would never recover. His mind was lost to a permanent state of derangement. Now the political consequences were impossible to ignore. In 1811, Parliament passed the Regency Act, officially declaring the king unfit to rule and making his eldest son, George, the Prince Regent. The reign of King George III was, for all practical purposes, over. For the last 10 years of his life, the king lived as a prisoner of his own mind in Windsor Castle. He was now completely blind and growing deaf. He would have long conversations with people who were long dead, especially his beloved Amelia, whom he often believed was still alive and happy. Queen Charlotte, now her husband's legal guardian, was devastated. The king's occasional violent outbursts meant it was no longer safe for her to be alone with him. It's believed that after 1812, their contact was extremely limited, if it happened at all. Still, she protected him from afar. When she died, she made sure the paths of Windsor Castle were lined with straw, so the noise of her funeral procession wouldn't disturb him. Queen Charlotte's own health gave out, and she died of pneumonia in November 1818, with her children by her side. She passed away in an armchair at Kew Palace, never knowing if her husband had any idea she was gone. A little over a year later, on January 29, 1820, King George III died at the age of 81. He was completely unaware that the woman he had loved for nearly 60 years was already gone. The story of King George III and Queen Charlotte started as an arrangement but became one of history's great royal love stories. Theirs was a partnership built on real affection, shared values, and a devotion that produced a huge family and defined an era. They stood together through wars, revolutions, and political crises. But the one enemy they couldn't beat was the one that came from within. Their fairy tale became a tragedy, not because of betrayal or secrets, but because of the cruel randomness of illness. Charlotte's story is one of incredible loyalty, as she went from a cherished wife to a steadfast guardian, forever bound to the man she loved, even when he was lost to her. And George's story is a heartbreaking reminder of the man behind the crown, a devoted husband and father overtaken by an illness that no one in his time could understand. Their legacy isn't just about madness or a lost empire. It's a profoundly human story about a love that was tested to its absolute limit, a love that drove a king into the depths of his own mind and made a queen a legend of devotion.